Alright, what is up guys? So I know this video is like super late. However, I just kind of want to talk about it and overall the changes. I've been saying I was going to do it for the past like 5 days and I've just been lazy and haven't done it. Honestly, yeah, that's just all. Really, nothing else to say about that. But I just woke up and I was like, I might as well finally do it because I've been telling people I'll do it forever. But anyways, now that here we finally are, let's get right into it. So obviously, as for the patch, as normal, they always fix a bunch of bugs. I don't really care about any of these. There's still a ton of bugs during the game. One major one that I have been getting constantly is sometimes when you go down to later floors, it just won't load you into the floor. It'll kick you out of the game. And you keep all your stuff, but your teammates go down to the floor and you never load in and it loads you into the lobby. So then your teammates are just down the next floor without a person, which sometimes is fine because they can find a blue and get out. Sometimes, like last night, my friend died because he couldn't find a blue, ran into a team, and they killed him. But yeah, that is what it is. So moving on, just going over the actual patch. Ranger spear proficiency, spear for proficiency's additional physical power changed from 7 to 5. This is such a minor nerf. I mean, losing 2 phys power on a weapon is literally like you might have lost 1 or 2 damage on it, right? Like that's really not a big deal. And I don't mean like 1 or 2 weapon damage. I mean like 1 or 2 damage total after everything is said and done. The damage calculation is done. It's very, very minor. The reason Ranger is so strong with Spear has nothing to do with Spear proficiency. I mean, it gaining 7 physical power is, I mean, it's like I said, it's very, very little. It has very, very small effect. The reason Ranger is so good with Spear is because of backstep. So the problem with Spear, if you guys don't know, every weapon in the game, for I mean, barring a few, works like this, where they have sour spots, and basically what that means is you have to hit them with a certain part of the weapon to do full damage. Arming sword, it's kind of like the tip of the blade. Horseman's axe is specifically like the blade part. If you hit them with the tip or anything lower than that of the blade, like the handle, it does drastically less damage. Halberd, bardiche, hit them with the stick part instead of the blade, you do much less damage. Spear, however, is a little bit interesting. Spear isn't necessarily based on the part that you hit them with, because obviously, it's a thrusting weapon. You're always going to be hitting them with the blade, mostly, right? Spear is based on the distance at which you hit them. So if they are too close to you, then you're going to be doing your reduced damage. I'm not sure if the spear's exact amount of damage reduced, but it's probably 70% of the total damage if you hit them with the sour spot, or somewhere around those numbers. But why am I saying this? Well, because Ranger, their backstep perfectly puts them in range to always be sweet sliding with the spear. So they have a skill that perfectly negates the one weakness that the weapon usually would have, which is why it's so strong, right? And like I said, this isn't an issue with spear specifically. It's a backstep issue with specifically. No other class has the ability to do that. That's why you don't ever see any other class using spear, right? It's not like it's like, oh well, Ranger has 7 phys power, that's why they're using spear. It's like, no, it's because of backstep. Um, and then moving on, Ranger's Purge shot now removes all magical buffs and deals an additional 15 true physical damage upon removing buffs. So this spell, I guess technically, skill is really good now. Just in case anybody's wondering, it does not do 15 true damage per buff. It is only like it just like if you shoot somebody, do they have buffs? Yes, remove them, then you do 15 true damage. Do they have buffs? No, you don't remove anything, you don't do true damage. This skill, it's like the quick fire or whatever, like the action speed skill where you just activate it. It's active for a short amount of time, and then any shot you do during that time has purge shot value. And you see they did decrease the cooldown from 28 seconds to 18 seconds. This is really good, I think. I think the meta is kind of shifting away from like the buff characters right now, because a lot of characters just don't find I mean, with this next change I'm going to talk about, like it's just really, really hard to actually play them. Characters like Bard, Druid just are fundamentally bad now because you just can't play into the game. Like you're just like you just think you could play something like Bard. You play your songs for 10 seconds and then one spell predation or one shot from a purge shot removes it. Same with the Druid. You full buff your team, restore, nature's touch, tree of life, bark skin, whatever you do, right? And then boom, one shot, all your buffs are gone, and they do more damage. So don't get me wrong, I like the idea of we're not nerfing something, we're gonna just give people opportunities to counter it. However, this is the same issue I have for a lot of things with fighter, where yes, it's like if I want to counter fighter, what do? I build like armor pen, I build true damage, whatever. but then you leave the person that you're countering in the spot where they can't, like, it's not like oh, I counter you, now I'm countering you, countering me, oh, now I'm countering you, countering me, countering you. That's not how it is. It's just, oh, I counter you, okay, now I'm countering you. It's like, oh, well, I can't do anything about that, right? You have, like, for things like Purge Shot here, and let me just go into the next one too, the Warlock one. Warlock spell predation now deals 3 dark magical damage per buff gorged when feasting. Okay, I don't know why do they word. When you remove a buff with spell predation, you deal 3 damage per buff removed. And then Warlock's Darkness Shards now provide a 1-all attribute effect. Okay. So the problem here is you, like, as a buffing class, as a bard, right, you have no counter to these skills, right? Especially spell predation. At least Purge Shot has a cooldown. Spell predation is active 24/7. There is no counter to this whatsoever. Your counter is just not playing your buffs, right? And that's not really a counter. You're just then not playing a part of your class because they took 1 spell, right? They effectively took, like, think of it this way. Warlocks run 5 spell. They use 1 of those spell slots on spell predation, and that 1 spell slot effectively removes 8 of your bard songs, right? I mean, come on, does that really make sense? Ranger, same way. 1 skill they use effectively removes both of your skill slots. And, I mean, when you say it like that, you can kind of see, like, the ridiculousness behind this. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here, I'm a Buffball defender. Like, I hate Buffball, right? I want Buffball to be, like, nerfed in some way. But I just don't like, you know, you making it so it's like they're getting countered so hard. Because the thing is, so like, Purge Shot isn't that bad about it because it's just 15 true damage when you remove their buffs. Spell Predation, however, this skill is incredibly broken. I'm just in game right now. Let me go show you guys this. Where is my guy at? My Warlock right here. Yeah, there you go, hide this. So look at this spell, right? Consume up to all removable magic with buffs from the enemy and gain 1 Darkness Shard per effect. Inflict 3 with 100% scaling evil magical damage per effect. So effectively, I've said effect too many times. So what happens is if you removed 10 buffs, you would do 30 base damage with 1000% scaling. So what does that scale? It scales your magical power for 1, which isn't that big a deal because you're only scaling 3, right? Like, you know, you're just scaling, if you have 100% magical power, this goes from 3 base damage to 6 base damage. The problem here is that little number beside it, the 100% scaling, works on things like true damage. So, like, if you have true magical damage, each buff you applies the 1 true magical damage to them. And you can build 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 even, you know? You could build a ton of it. So effectively, in a good kit, what is happening is every single buff that is removed is doing 10 damage. And, you know, Bard on their own usually has 5 or more buffs. That's 50 damage they're taking, and they're getting their buff stripped away, right? It's kind of insane. I mean, I think a lot of people are, like, starting to realize that. Furthermore, one of, like, the problems I see a lot of people complaining about now is something like Troll's Blood. Troll's Blood gets ripped off by spell predation. And, you know, just to show you again, just because I think this is funny. Imagine, you know, you're like, oh, I'm going to buy a Troll's Blood for this run. It's really strong. I want to use it. And you spend 1,300 gold on a Troll's Blood for 1 run. You pop it, and they just spell predate and rip it off of you, and it's gone. Right? I mean, it's kind of funny on one hand, and on the other, it's like, wow, that really sucks. Then, a little bit even further on top of that, right here, the Darkness Shards new buff. So now, if you guys don't know before, Darkness Shards, what they were a special part of Spell Predation and Soul Collector. It was what the Demon Form Warlocks used to get the +5 all in Demon Form. No longer is that the case. Now, as long as you have the Darkness Shards, each of them gives you a 1 all buff. So effectively, every Warlock can run around just having an additional +5 all just for fun. And the thing is, you don't have to take Soul Collector for this, because Spell Predation, when you eat buffs, it gives you that 1 all effect on you. So you literally are taking a spell that is just countering half the classes in the meta, counters a ton of different items, you know, like Troll's Bloods, potions, all of that thing. And on top of that, when you actually rip these buffs off people, you're doing an insane amount of damage, and you're giving yourself +5 all attributes. So, I mean, I think just it's very, very obvious to a lot of people. Maybe I'm not. Maybe some of you are unaware, but Warlock is insanely OP now. It's ridiculous. Like I said though, the meta how it's shaping up is a lot of people aren't even playing these Buffball style classes anymore. A lot of it is just people are playing triple DPS again, which personally I don't really enjoy. I don't think that meta's fun. Some people disagree, but yeah, Warlock is just ridiculously dumb. Like I said, it's like just a crazy overbuff. And getting back to my original point of I don't like this is something I have a lot of issues with. I don't like when you make things do a lot of different stuff. Like, okay, in my mind, when you think of something like a utility spell, right? A utility spell should have a very, very good use, but it should be limited. It should have very big drawbacks. Spell predation should not be doing a million damage. Like, if you want to remove all of somebody's buffs, good, remove their buffs. Like, that is enough. That is hurting them enough. Like, if I take a bard team and I take every single one of their buffs away, like, why is that not enough of a negative for them? Why do I also have to do, 30 damage to each of them on top of it and get +5 all for myself, right? It's like anti-heal in games. I've mentioned this before, but I don't like when anti-heal items in games are usually incredibly strong items with their power or whatever wise, think like MOBAs and stuff. I don't like when it's just like, oh, I'm building this and it also has anti-heal, right? It's like when you build an item like that, or, an item or you take a spell or whatever that's considered utility, it should not also be a damage thing or, giving you something else. It should be pure utility. Right? Like, imagine if Cleric heals, like, I healed you, and I also give you movement speed, or I give you damage, or something along those lines, right? It's just, it doesn't make sense. Like, it's already good enough for what it does. You don't need to make it do more. But yeah, that's kind of enough on that. Like I said, spell predation is a much larger issue. I think Purge Shot is good. However, I definitely think you can make Purge Shot not remove every buff. Just make it remove, like, 3 or something. I bet, because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, overall, I mean, it's a different meta, right? And I think a lot of people are happy with that. So yeah, is what it is. So on to Druid. Druid's Shapeshift now has 4 stacks and a 6-second cooldown on each recharge. Druid's Shapeshift casting times would change from 1 second to 0.5 seconds. Sorry, and Druid's Thorn Barrier width change from 150 to 200 units. So a lot of people saw this and like, oh wow, Druid's dead. No, it's not. Druid, it's still perfectly fine. So I will something worth mentioning. The 4 stacks does not count human form. Human form is free to turn into, so you could go 4 animals back to human, and you don't have to care about your cooldown. I actually was curious about it myself. Have had that confirmed. Then each stack, each time you transform, you have a 6-second cooldown. For the most part, this doesn't really change anything for Druid. You just have to play like more correctly. You don't just get to sprint at people like Panther, Chicken, Rat, Bear, flying across modules, stuff like that, right? Because if you do, you are going to be locked out of your animal forms. Overall, it's just, I think, a good change. It takes a lot of the, like, pain away from Druid, where you had the people that were constantly swapping forms, like, every 0.1 second, just spamming it, and there's nothing you can do about it, because, like, how do you even, like, you don't know what they're going to turn into, so how can you ever possibly predict it? Right? Just stupid stuff like that. The shapeshift casting times have changed. This is like whatever. Shapeshift Mastery makes this relevant anyways. I think this is just base without it, so maybe a chance not to run it, but it is what it is. And the Druid's Thorn Barrier, they just made it a little bit bigger so it can block more things. I mean, it's still a shitty skill because you can just jump over it, but yeah, it is what it is. Sorcerer's Manifold Movement Speed penalty has been removed. Honestly, I'm not even sure what spell it is. I can check, or the skill is. Let me actually check really quick. It's my first time logging on my Sorcerer in like the past like month. Manifold. Which one is that? Reduce cooldowns of all spells by 25%, but reduce spellcasting speed by 15%. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm wondering, I'm like, huh, there's not a move speed penalty on this, and I probably should understand why, because they just removed it. Okay. So, okay, so I mean, that's cool. I feel like the spellcasting speed probably isn't that necessary. I mean, yeah, I mean, you could probably pair this with like time distortion or something, and it just makes it good. I'm not actually sure if people run, but I mean, that seems fine. Definitely better. I mean, losing 15% spellcasting speed on relatively short cooldown spells or relatively short to cast spells anyway is not that big a deal. But maybe, I don't know. I don't play Sorcerer. And Sorcerers can now remove combat. If you don't know what this means, basically before on Sorcerer you had 2 different slots where it was, right here you had your Suppress Sorcery. You can remove this now and you can put on 2 additional spells when before you couldn't. Before you could only run 8 maximum spells, now you can run 10. Which is just a good change. If you're on a melee, so if you're not a melee Sorcerer, you don't care about that. Also, there was never a reason for you to have 2 of these. You only ever needed 1 of them. So, is what it is. Yeah, and then lastly, they have some game updates. Like Arena and Hyrule leaderboards are out. Reimplementation of lower gear score lobbies. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you. Everybody knew this was coming. Literally everyone knew this was coming. It was just guaranteed, right? It was always gonna happen. They added a gold pile to the wheel module, which is just Coliseum, in the middle of it, where the Skeleton Champ is. They added a gold item. Count item for crafted utility container has been removed. You only need to wait for the merchant time to reset to craft a lot of these items. Cool, doesn't matter. Crafted potion count changed from 1 to 3 for potions. They did this for clarities. Additional random layouts added to the Crypt Random Dungeon. Added new sash item for the Tailor. This right here was so the boss room, because the boss room is kind of like, it wasn't solved 100%, but it was like everybody knew where it could be. Or you didn't, well, not everybody, but there was literally a map of like where the boss could spawn with the chances of it. Now it can spawn everywhere. So yeah, is what it is. Overall, definitely a bad patch in terms of good balance. I mean, the Warlock change alone is just ridiculous. They made this character literally God, Thanos, King, Demon, Hell. But anyways, yeah, that's gonna wrap it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will be back later. Also, be on the lookout. I'm definitely gonna put out a fighter guide soon. So yeah, catch you later. And my game just crashed. Love this game. Peace, peace.